In 2023, the Penn State Nittany Lions continued a trend of not being able to beat the top teams in the Big Ten. Will they be able to break that streak in 2024? Let's look into it. So if we're looking at the strengths of this team, I think you got to look at the defense and the running back room. If you're looking at the running backs, you got that 1-2 punch of Nick Singleton and Kaytron Allen, which should be one of the best running back duos in the country, maybe the best in the Big Ten, right up there with Ohio State. And then the defense should be great. It was great last year. Should be great again this year. Abdul Carter, he moves to the edge, where he was more inside linebacker last year, but he's really good in the pass rush, so I think he'll still be great on the edge. And then you got Denny Sutton there, very good player. Kobe King's on that defense. A lot of really good players. The secondary, you lose some pieces, but I think with the transfers you bring in, A.J. Harris from Georgia, and I think there's players on the roster poised to break out, that the defense will be still amongst the best in the country. But if you're looking at the weaknesses, and you got to look at the explosiveness of the offense and the passing game, and so you're looking at the wide receiver talent, and then you're looking at the quarterback. So for the wide receivers, you lose Lambert Smith, transfers to Auburn, but you bring in Julian Fleming from Ohio State. Now, Julian Fleming hasn't proven that he's been to be a true number one. At his time at Ohio State, he was usually more of a third option there behind guys like Marvin Harrison or Emeka Egbuka or the various other wide receivers they've had. But when he was recruited, he was, I believe, ranked the highest wide receiver recruit in the country when he came to Ohio State. So he's clearly a very talented guy. And just because you're not a top option at Ohio State, that doesn't mean you're not a number one player. We've seen this with Jameson Williams when he transferred to Alabama. And you can imagine if you're behind a guy like Marvin Harrison or Emeka Egbuka, or before them, Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson, or all these wide receivers Ohio State produces, that you could still be a really good receiver and one of the best that Penn State's had recently, and not be a top option for Ohio State. But so we'll see what he's able to do. And then a guy like Caden Saunders could be a breakout player, receiver as well. And then the tight end room looks very strong. But Drew Aller, now he's a highly touted guy, highly recruited guy. I think he's about 6'5", big arm, not really mobile, but he should be, that prototypical big pocket passer quarterback. But in the big games last year, that just wasn't there. It was all screen passes or intermediate. There were never any wow throws made by Drew Aller in big games. So even though his touchdown interception ratio was really good last year, when people really watched him play, he didn't look like a very good quarterback. So he needs to be better in the big games this year, and Penn State needs to allow him to be better, which is why they brought in the Kansas, is it Nick Kolimecki, the Kansas OC, to help this passing game. So I think it will get better, and I think Penn State will take a step forward offensively this year while maintaining how good they were defensively. I think they're going to have a really good season. How good? Well, let's get into the record predictions. I think you open up with a win against West Virginia. I do think this will be a game where Penn State's offense isn't fully clicking yet, and it'll kind of raise some questions, because I think this will be a close, low-scoring, hard-fought win that Penn State's defense makes enough plays to win, and there'll still be questions about Drew Aller and the Penn State offense and how dynamic are the wide receivers. And I don't think this game's going to resolve those questions. But I think you win against Bowling Green pretty easily. Shouldn't be much of a competitive game for Penn State. And I do think the offense plays much better here. Then you get a really early bye week, which I don't love. But yeah, it doesn't really affect the next game. I think you beat Kent State, the offense still rolling. And then a home game against Illinois, who I think could have one of the weaker defenses in the Big Ten this year. Not a bad team. I think Luke Altmaier could be pretty good for them. But I don't trust the defense, because it was not great last year, and you lose your best player in Jason Newton on that D-line. And I think Penn State's offense is really clicking at this point. And I really like the schedule, the way it works out, because Bowling Green, Kent State, Illinois, and then UCLA, which also losing so much on the D-line is going to allow Penn State to establish a run game, and then with complementary football, The passing game will be there as well. So I think UCLA is a team Penn State's equipped to beat because they lose guys like the Murphy brothers or Latu to the NFL draft. And I think Penn State's offense looking pretty good. And then another weaker defense in the USC Trojans up next. Now, obviously a better team than UCLA or Illinois, and a really dynamic offense that could challenge the Penn State defense. But I think Penn State has too much of an edge on the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. They'll be able to run the ball against UCLA, and I think they'll be able to disrupt UCLA's offense with their pass rush. And I think that'll allow for Penn State to get another win and start the season 6-0, getting your final bye week of the season here. Now, I do like this spot for the bye because if you had gone to USC and then back across country to Wisconsin, I would pick Wisconsin to win this game. But because of the bye week in between and the rest advantage Penn State's going to have, I think you're able to regroup well and beat the Badgers, who I don't think with their new air raid offense will be good enough yet. Maybe it improves more in the future, but at this point, I don't think it's going to be dynamic enough to really cause Penn State's defense serious problems. And I think Penn State gets a win before a huge game against Ohio State. Clearly the biggest game of the season for the Nittany Lions. And it's just one of those games where you would think, with all the things I've said about Penn State taking a step forward offensively, Drew Aller being better, the defense being there, having those running backs, maybe improved perimeter talent, hiring the right OC, it's all set up for Penn State to finally get over the hump. But it's something I need to see to believe, and I'm going to pick Ohio State to win this game. But Penn State will bounce back with a win against Washington. Washington, at this point in the year, I think it'll be clear that this is clearly not last year's team. Significantly worse, actually, and not equipped to be a top 25 team even. Maybe just a middle-of-the-road team. Will Rogers probably be pretty good. And I think Washington got a good replacement for Kalen DeBoer and Jed Fish. But I don't think they're going to be a top team this year, and Penn State will beat them at home. Then you have 2 road games, usually a very tough spot playing back-to-back road games. But Penn State, I think, drew 2 of the weaker teams in the Big Ten, and will be able to win both just because of a vast talent edge in both of these games. Now you finish the year, you're going to be at home against the Maryland team that I think's a little bit underrated. I think they're still a solid team. Not on Penn State's level, though. Penn State too talented, better at defense, control the line of scrimmage here, and should be able to win this game and finish 11-1. Maybe good enough to get to the Big Ten championship. Maybe good enough to get, or definitely should be good enough to get to the college football playoff. All right, guys, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, feel free to check out my other videos on other teams' season predictions for 2024, as well as my full-length videos for entire conference predictions and playoff predictions coming soon. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.